Any vehicle can take you places, but why stop there? The Alfa Romeo Tonale combines luxurious Italian design and electrifying performance to make every mile a masterpiece and every arrival unforgettable. When precision meets instinct and power moves with purpose, you never have to stay in a lane. Experience a world without limits in the Alfa Romeo Tonale plug-in hybrid. Tap the banner to learn more. Alfa Romeo is a registered trademark of FCA Group Marketing SPA, used with permission.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee's secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
I'm sure you know that meningitis is relatively rare in kids. So I don't know what the chances are that this happened, but it did. When I was a second-year pediatrics resident, I admitted 2 patients on the same night from the emergency room, and they both had meningitis, and they were both 2 years old. The big difference was they each were infected by a different disease. I went down to the ER to see the first kid. She was really sick, and she had already had a spinal tap done. So the doctors knew it was meningitis based on the analysis of the cerebrospinal fluid. But what we didn't know was which bacteria she was infected with. So we started a really broad antibiotic that treats the most common causes of meningitis, and she got better over the course of like 48 hours. But unfortunately, the infection caused her to be permanently deaf. It turned out she had meningitis caused by a bacteria called Haemophilus influenza, which is also known as Hib. That's the infection that's prevented by the Hib vaccine that babies get at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months. And then kids get a booster sometime after age 1. A lot of people hear the name of this bacteria and confuse it with influenza virus, but they're completely different infections. Hib bacteria, they cause ear infections, pneumonia, blood sepsis, and can cause meningitis. The second child I saw had a form of meningitis from the bacteria Neisseria. He had not been vaccinated because we don't vaccinate for this until about age 11. As you probably know, meningitis can be deadly very quickly. This is the one that can cause infections in college students. You've probably heard some stories. This kid did really well without any consequences as far as I know, but only because it was caught within hours of his fever starting. Apparently, he had been playing outside riding his tricycle and he was totally fine. But over the course of about 30 minutes, he started suddenly to act really, really sick. Then he vomited and he had a fever. And his parents probably wouldn't have done anything special except they noticed he had a weird rash starting. So they brought him directly to the ER. The reason these cases are top of my mind right now is that night was one of a few very specific experiences that I had during my residency training that made me committed to protecting children from diseases that can be prevented by vaccination. Both of those kids survived, but I have not seen many kids that sick in my career. It was frankly scary and extremely humbling. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about why we give immunizations, but it is the most effective thing we do to keep kids healthy. I'm going to share a few other firsthand experiences throughout this episode. These particular patients have also been on my mind recently because apparently my name is on a list of recommended pediatricians who don't pressure parents into vaccinating if they are uncomfortable with it. And I don't know how my name got on that list. At first, I was upset when a parent told me that this was the reason they chose me as their child's doctor. But since then, I've taken the fact that my name is on this list as a compliment because it's true. I'm not here to force anyone into anything. I'm not here to shame parents. I know vaccines can feel scary. No one likes watching their baby get poked with a needle. No one likes getting poked with a needle themselves. But here's what I want to do. I want to make parents feel confident that vaccinating their child is the right thing to do, because it is. There's nothing to be fearful of when it comes to vaccines. And I hope by the end of this episode, you'll feel the same way. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. I'm that doctor friend you call for practical advice about your kid's health. I mix the science of medicine with the reality of parenting. Vaccine hesitancy. That's what it's called when parents are unsure about vaccinating their kids. It's not the extreme anti-vaxxers who believe in conspiracy theories about alien DNA and vaccines. That's not common. It's the very rare person who doesn't vaccinate. The majority of kids who aren't fully vaccinated have parents who just are a little bit hesitant. Maybe they delay shots, maybe they skip certain vaccines, or they just feel uneasy about the whole process. And I totally get that. But here's the problem. The loudest voices belong to this anti-vax crowd. They spread fear, and fear is sticky. It's why you see social media posts with 1 million likes about a child who got their 1-year-old vaccines and then had a developmental delay, because that's dramatic and it's interesting. No one makes a post about their child getting the MMR vaccine and then not getting measles. That's a boring story, and that's not going to go viral. No modern parent is out there bragging that all 4 of their kids made it to the age of 8. But if you go back 150 years, that wasn't a guarantee. Before vaccines, kids died all the time from things as simple as strep and smallpox. Modern medicine is pretty badass. But we don't have the cure for everything. And there are parents out there who wish we had a cure or a vaccine for their child's illness. Think about that. This reminds me of a 17-year-old girl I saw in the ER. She was beautiful, and I think that that's why this is always going to be stuck in my mind. About 18 months before I met her, she had West Nile encephalitis. It was a super rare case, but she got a mosquito bite that carried the virus. That was how she got it, and she was completely neurologically brain dead since then. She still looked like a beautiful young teenager. I could picture that being my own daughter. It was devastating. It was really scary. This is the kind of case that makes you wish there were a vaccine for everything. We've wished for vaccines so many times throughout history. And when they come along, they change everything. Think about polio. Before the vaccine, parents lived in fear of their child being paralyzed, right? Now, polio is rare, and some parents use that as a reason not to vaccinate. But polio is only rare because we vaccinate. That logic that a disease is not worth vaccinating for because it's uncommon, that logic is backwards. It's uncommon because we vaccinate. We are seeing that right now with measles. Some parents don't want to vaccinate because they don't trust the government or pharmaceutical companies, but in my experience, that's not usually parents' primary concern. The truth is, most parents who hesitate about vaccines, they can't quite put their finger on why they feel uneasy. They've just heard that some people don't vaccinate, and it makes them pause. If you want to be a thoughtful parent, you're going to think about this. Many parents tell me they want to do their own research. I hear this phrase from parents all the time, but here's the problem with that. What does doing your own research even mean? You're not going to run a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And if you Google, are vaccines safe? You're going to get a mix of information. So you can't do your research that way either. Much of this is more unreliable than any pharmaceutical company. Here's where you can do your research, okay? Listen up. The best sources are nonprofit and academic institutions. You can find a complete list of trusted sources of vaccine information at vaccineinformation.org. Scroll to the bottom of the page on that link and find a list. That way you can look at many varied sources to understand the details of any particular vaccine you're concerned about. And the site isn't just for kids. It's got information for adults too. Anyway, you know who actually has done their research? The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and the American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Infectious Diseases. These two groups are made up of experts, literally thousands of experts in virology, microbiology, epidemiology, and so on. When they review vaccine safety, it's not just one person's opinion. It's their consensus based on literally thousands of research studies and years of research. So let them do the research for you. You can trust this process. My point is, be careful about doing your own research. It's true that most doctors, including myself, have not reviewed all the studies on vaccine safety and effectiveness. So I don't really know the details. So yeah, maybe a parent can do their research and know more than I do. Anyway, next up. I've heard so many parents ask me questions like, are vaccines really necessary? Or can we delay some of them? And let me start by saying this. These are great questions. You're not alone, and it's really fine to have concerns. Our job as pediatricians, and my job, is to provide you with the facts so you can make informed decisions. Let's start with the simple truth. Vaccines save lives. Before vaccines, diseases like polio, measles, whooping cough, they caused widespread illness, disability, and deaths, as you're seeing now. Thanks to these vaccines, though, these diseases are rare, and some of them are eliminated in many parts of the world. But here's the thing. These diseases have not disappeared entirely. We've seen outbreaks of measles and whooping cough in recent years, usually in communities with lower vaccination rates. And why is that? Because these germs are still out there. They're waiting for an opportunity to spread. And vaccines are used to create a shield of protection for your child and for everyone in your community. It's called herd immunity. The idea is that when enough people are vaccinated, or most of your herd, it's harder for a disease to spread throughout it. So vaccinating most of the people in a group protects people who can't get vaccinated, like newborns, or for kids with cancer or weakened immune systems. They can't become immune even if they get a vaccine, some of these kids. So for measles, for example, the magic number is 94%. When the percentage of kids who are vaccinated with MMR falls below this magic number, there are enough kids who can get the disease, then that is when we see outbreaks occur. That's what happened in New York City, and now it's happening in Texas. We have a patient in our clinic over the past few months who has whooping cough, which is also known as pertussis. That's the P and the DTaP vaccine. And I say we have a patient in our clinic over the past few months because the mother brought this baby in so many times. Mom chose not to vaccinate her baby with the routine schedule, and her 4-month-old got sick with pertussis. She was a little on the older side, like 4 months is older, so she did fine. And babies who are under 2 months who get whooping cough, they tend to be extremely ill, often needing to stay in the intensive care unit. Anyway, this baby was not terribly ill, but I will tell you, her mother was exhausted because the baby coughed all the time. She was vomiting from coughing, and she's up all night. No one in the house was sleeping. And let me also tell you the other name for whooping cough. Do you know what it is? We call it the 100-day cough because literally it lasts for 100 days. And on day 90 of this baby's illness, her mom came into the clinic wanting to know why her baby was still coughing and what we could do about it. And I was very happy to inform her that she only had another week or so of the illness and it would start to go away. 100 days. This baby's mother was worried about the safety of the vaccines, but let me say again, vaccines are safe. They are far safer than the disease they're preventing, and I'm going to get into that. But first, I want to focus on why there is so much talk by politicians, on social media, and among parents that they say vaccines aren't safe. How did these rumors get started? Here's what I see. Concerns about vaccine safety usually follow a specific pattern. First, someone suggests that a health problem like autism, for example, might be linked to vaccines. Okay, whatever the health problem is, autism, Crohn's disease, seizures, it's always a condition that is becoming more common and always one that doesn't have a known cause. So someone suggests it might be caused by vaccines. Then the next thing that happens is that there are a few research studies, early, tentative, preliminary research studies that show there might be a link to the disease, but these are not well-designed studies and they might just be a few cases. Or in some cases, they may be completely made up, like the first study that linked autism with the MMR. It was completely made up. These early reports grab attention, especially from people that are affected by the condition, and then they're reported in the media because they're dramatic and they attract viewers, or they attract social media attention, which means more advertising dollars or more followers. Then, finally, we will have larger, better studies that come along, and they don't find the same results. But by then, fear has taken root. It can take years to undo the damage of this misinformation. The other thing that can help you see that information you hear on TV, social media, or from friends is unreliable is that people's fears about vaccines are different depending on where they live. That means fear is based on a social context and not on actual scientific data or on reality. For example, some English-speaking communities worry about vaccines and autism, as you know, while in other places like France, people worry about vaccines causing other conditions like multiple sclerosis and not about autism. In Nigeria, people worry that vaccines cause infertility. These fears don't have any solid evidence, but they still make parents hesitant to get the vaccines for their kids. It's fascinating to me that vaccine concerns are different in different parts of the world because that is a clear indication that our fears are culturally based. They are not based on fact. These are rumors and myths. It's not that different from believing in ghosts. I mean, I admit I do sometimes believe in magic or have fears that someone tells me a creepy story and then I think there's a ghost and it seems like it could be real, but I'll still go into a dark room or sleep alone at night because I know it's not true. So that's one of the reasons that vaccine fears are so common. And this type of belief that is embedded in our society is really hard to overcome. So as a parent, you need to be aware that there are clinicians out there who fuel these vaccine fears for their own gain. Some alternative medical practitioners and even a few doctors I know of promote alternative vaccine schedules. And it's not because these schedules are safer. It's because it builds this clinician's own reputation and gets them more customers. It gets them more patients. For example, take pediatrician Robert Spears. He made up his own immunization schedule to sell books and attract patients to his clinic. He spread myths like this broad idea that natural immunity is better, which is not true, and I'll get into it, and that he also said some diseases are too rare to worry about. Also, bullshit. But getting sick is risky, and these diseases are only rare because we vaccinate, as I said before. The safest way to get immunity is through vaccination. It's not through infection.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
ID Tech, the first and most trusted tech camp, is where kids ages 7 to 17 find their people. The coding and creating people. The fire-breathing, shell-spinning BattleBots people. The just-as-happy building games as they are playing them people. At 75 prestigious college campuses all across the country, ID Tech features over 50 epic courses like BattleBots, AI and machine learning, game design, and more. Visit idtech.com and use code IDTech to save $150 on a week that's guaranteed to be a highlight of summer.
Why are these ideas dangerous? Because getting the actual disease is more likely to cause long-term problems than the vaccine could ever cause. Think about it this way. If you're worried that the chickenpox vaccine is going to trigger an autoimmune disease, why aren't you just as worried that chickenpox, the actual disease, will do the same thing? The vaccine contains a weakened version of the virus, so it can't cause the full-blown disease, and it can't cause its potential complications. And if you're concerned about vaccines triggering immune reactions, consider this. There are countless viruses in the world, and any one of them could set off a response in a child who is genetically predisposed to autoimmune issues. So wouldn't you rather protect your child from as many of these risks as possible? And the idea that these diseases are so rare that vaccines aren't necessary, that's totally backward. They're only rare because we vaccinated. I've said this a million times. So saying we don't need vaccines because the diseases aren't common is like saying we don't need to wear a seatbelt because car accidents are rare. It ignores the reason why they're rare in the first place. Plus, choosing not to vaccinate isn't just a personal decision. I know someone just said that. RFK Jr., I'm looking at you. It affects the people around you. It's not a personal decision. Your child has friends who are immunocompromised. Sometimes you can't even tell who they are. These kids can't get vaccinated, or they get the vaccine and their immune system just doesn't make immunity. So the only way to protect your kid's friends, or maybe your kid, is by making sure the people around them are immune and can't spread the disease. That's why vaccines aren't just about individual protection. They're about community protection too. This is just part of the cultural landscape that parents are navigating right now, and I know it's tough. It's easy to see why it's confusing. When parents come across these issues, they walk away with a mix of concerns and fears and ideas about vaccines, and some are based on facts, but others are shaped by fear and misinformation. What I find interesting about parents who hesitate to vaccinate is that their fears come from so many different places. At the core of it, it does all come down to fear, but the specific worries are very different. To me, that means there isn't a solid reason not to vaccinate. If there was a reason not to vaccinate, every hesitant parent would have the same concern. Many parents don't even realize that part of their hesitation comes from something as simple as not wanting to see their child cry during an injection. And that's fair. Yes, kids do react to vaccines. That's kind of the point. If a child gets redness at the injection site or feels a little off or has a brief fever, that's a sign their immune system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's building protection. So don't be fearful of this. If your biggest fear is the discomfort of the vaccine, go back and listen to episode 87 that I recorded. It's called Stress-Free Shots, How to Make Vaccines Easy for Your Child. I list the specific steps you can take to make getting a shot not hurt, including using topical lidocaine. There are ways to do this. Okay, aside from that, these are the most common concerns that I hear parents say to me regularly in clinic. The first is the idea that vaccines are overwhelming for a baby's immune system. This is a myth. Babies encounter countless bacteria and viruses every day, every time they touch something or put their hands in their mouth. Like, they are literally exposed to thousands of pathogens every day. And vaccines use a tiny fraction of their immune system's capacity. It's like if you ask an Olympic athlete who trains for hours every day to do just one sit-up, it's a tiny task compared to what their body is already handling. Another question I hear is about the vaccine schedule. Why do we have to give so many vaccines so early? Or parents ask me, can I use my own schedule? I mean, okay, yeah, you can follow your own schedule, that's fine. But this schedule is not random. It's carefully designed based on when children are the most vulnerable to a specific disease and when their immune system is going to respond best. Unfortunately, for my second patient with meningitis that I talked about at the beginning of the show, Neisseria meningitis infections, they peak around age 16 to 20, and the immunity to the vaccine doesn't last forever. So in the United States, the vaccine is given at age 11, and a booster is given at age 16 so that we protect kids in the time in life when they are most likely to get the disease. It was just super unlucky that this kid got exposed at age 2 before he was vaccinated. It's just really uncommon in the US to get meningococcal meningitis that young. So some other countries do give this vaccine to infants and toddlers in their routine schedule. Another example of why we have a particular schedule is whooping cough or pertussis, which, as I said before, it can be very dangerous or even deadly for young babies. That's why we give the vaccine as early as 2, 4, and 6 months, because we need to protect them during those critical first months. When experts design the schedule, they take into consideration how much immune protection a baby will get from their mother before they're born. This is exactly why we give the measles vaccine after a year of age, because they have protection from their mother that can interfere with the vaccine before age 1. The other thing about creating your own schedule is that who has tested your schedule? The schedule that is recommended has been extensively tested for safety with the combination of vaccines that are given at a certain time, and they're also tested for effectiveness. Your own schedule or random combination of vaccines isn't tested, so we just don't know what effects could happen. It's a little dangerous, which brings me to concerns about side effects. What about side effects? Are vaccines really safe? I hear this from parents too, and this is a great question. The truth is, vaccines are among the most tested medical products we have. They undergo years of research and many clinical trials before they're approved. And if you compare this to over-the-counter supplements, they do not get any testing. That's why we sometimes hear about strange side effects to supplements like kids developing breast tissue from being exposed to lavender oil. They're not tested, but vaccines are. So yes, like any medication, vaccines can have side effects, but they're usually mild, like you've seen it, a sore arm, low fever. Serious side effects are extraordinarily rare. It's far more common to see a bad outcome from getting a disease than to see a side effect. For example, the chance of having a severe allergic reaction to a vaccine is 1 in a million. Compare that to the risk of the diseases that vaccines prevent. For example, measles can cause pneumonia, brain swelling, and as you know now, even death. And when you look at the bigger picture, it's safer to get the vaccine and face the tiny risk of an allergic reaction than to take the chance of getting whooping cough because you're not up to date on your Tdap vaccine. Let's talk about some of the misinformation out there now. One of the most persistent myths is the false claim that vaccines cause autism. The MMR does not cause autism. This idea came from a discredited study that has been thoroughly debunked by numerous large-scale studies involving hundreds of thousands of children. Let's take a step back and understand how vaccines work. And this might be a little boring, I'm sorry, but anyway. Vaccines stimulate the immune system to make antibodies, which are special proteins that protect against specific diseases. Each vaccine targets a particular pathogen, such as a bacteria or a virus that causes a disease. Once the immune system learns to recognize and fight off that pathogen, it remembers how to protect it again in the future. But some of this immunity can wear off in some vaccines. Let's talk about the specific types of vaccines. Okay, I'm sorry, this is going to be a lot to take in. Just wanted to warn you, but here it comes. All right, one type of vaccine are inactivated vaccines. These use pathogens that have been deactivated, meaning they can't cause illness, but they do trigger the immune system to create antibodies. The poliovirus is an example of this one. Then there's live attenuated vaccines. These use a weakened form of the pathogen, and this is like the MMR for measles, mumps, and rubella. Then there are subunit vaccines. These contain only a piece of the pathogen, such as one protein that would be on the outside of a virus's surface, for example, and that stimulates an immune response. The HPV vaccine is in this category. And then finally, there are nucleic acid vaccines like the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. They work differently. Instead of containing part of the virus, they provide instructions for your body's cells to produce harmless pieces of the virus. Your immune system then makes antibodies against those pieces and prepares it to fight the actual virus if you're exposed. The type of vaccine that's used for a disease is carefully chosen based on which approach provides the strongest protection with the lowest risk of side effects. And many of these vaccines do require boosters because the immune system needs repeated exposure before it can make long-lasting antibodies. All right, the other thing I hear a lot of parents worry about are the preservatives in the ingredients in vaccines, so let me clear that up. Many vaccines contain tiny amounts of things like aluminum salts, which enhance their effectiveness. Aluminum has been used safely in vaccines for decades, and it's actually present in much smaller amounts in vaccines than what we get daily through our food and water. As for mercury, the preservative thimerosal has been removed from all vaccines. The only exception I'm aware of is the multi-dose vials of the flu vaccine, but I highly doubt any pediatric practice is using that. They're mostly used in settings where healthcare workers are vaccinating large groups of people at once. I've probably gotten it myself, honestly, and I'm not worried. Many studies have shown that thimerosal is totally safe. In fact, it was only removed to address parental concerns, not because it was dangerous. So today, all childhood vaccines are thimerosal free. So don't worry about this. At the beginning of this episode, I shared the experiences that drive me to help parents feel confident about vaccinating. And when I tried to think of patients who were actually harmed by a vaccine, only one case came to mind, and he wasn't actually harmed. It was a teenage patient who came in for a chickenpox booster because he needed it for school. And I'm not sure if he missed his shot at age 5 or he just didn't have the documentation, but either way, an extra dose is fine. But shortly after he got it, he started getting hives. So I gave him an EpiPen and he was fine. And then we were chatting and I asked if he was allergic to gelatin, which is a common vaccine ingredient. And he said, no, I don't think so. And then I asked him about gummy bears and marshmallows. And that's when he realized he's like, oh, I never eat those. I assume he actually had reacted to them in the past and avoided them without realizing why. So he probably was actually allergic to gelatin and should not have gotten the chickenpox booster. But he was fine. I also had a patient who was thought to have developed Guillain-Barré syndrome after getting a vaccine. I'm not going to go into what that is. It's a terrible illness, but the timing made it seem like there was a connection. But since that time, this patient has received each of the same vaccines individually without any problems. So looking back, we think a virus caused her Guillain-Barré syndrome and not a vaccine. Which brings me to another point. Some people claim that the diseases that vaccines prevent aren't that bad. But this patient got Guillain-Barré from something, and it was probably a common infection that we don't have a vaccine for. Her immune system went haywire after being exposed to a virus, causing a terrifying and life-threatening condition. And if we knew which virus triggered it and had a vaccine against it, I guarantee you her parents would have wanted everyone vaccinated. All right, now, are you thoroughly confused or do you feel reassured that vaccinating your child is the right choice? I want to point out that this episode is like 30 minutes long, which is roughly the amount of time that a real conversation about vaccines takes. But in a well child visit, we get like 20 minutes total to cover everything. So there's really no time to go this in depth. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with parents, with friends, or anyone who feels the need to share their opinions about vaccines, because the more people who understand the nuances here, the better. For more from the Pediatrician Next Door, find me on the web at pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com. If you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email to hello@pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com for a chance to hear your voice on the show. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the Pediatrician Next Door. This show is produced by Red Rock Music. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever it is you're listening. I'll be back next time with more.